Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar on established medicines licensing process. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions via Slido at www.slido.com using the event code #EstMedsApril24, which we will also put in the chat. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Please note that we will not be accepting questions via the GoToWebinar chat function. It is now my pleasure to introduce your first speaker, Julian Beach, Interim Executive Director of Healthcare Quality and Access Group, MHRA.
Hello, good morning, and thank you very much for all of you attending today's webinar. So with me, I have Rachel Briccoli, Deputy Director for Population Health within HQA. And what we will be going through is an update of where we are with the established medicines. And I really just wanted to say thank you all for your time, but equally for everybody's support in helping us clear the backlog and the really positive engagement that we've had with all of you over the last 3 or 4 months as we work through this, and we are starting to see real movement in clearing the numbers of applications that we have in our work queue. So today, and the purpose of today's Established Medicines webinar is really just to follow up on the March the 7th webinar to give a progress update, bit of an update on our latest performance, where we are today, an overview of our prioritization approach, including a short update on supply. It's a reminder of the changes that we have introduced, and then sharing our initial learnings and how you all can help us move to the next milestones that we have to clear the backlog. And as just been mentioned, we will have an open Q&A session where Rachel and I will take questions that relate to the established medicines portfolio. Unfortunately, we won't be addressing any questions on any other topics this morning, so the other topic questions will not be answered, just to be clear. So again, if we look at where we are today, so the purpose of the webinar and other activities is really to look at being very transparent on our strategic priorities. So looking through, the next slide, please. The top 2 strategic priorities from the agency is really to maintain public trust through transparency and proactive communication. And what we're looking to try to do is to have that communication with you and being able to answer questions as they're coming in. We are moving very much to publishing more of our KPIs and being very clear on how we are progressing with the backlog. And then enabling access to safe and effective medical products through having more predictable approvals and the inspection associated with those if required. So really being much more transparent in our throughput. And we recognize this is a journey, so that we haven't got all the information out there that potentially people would like, but we are looking at, as we go through, to start with our new financial year, to publish more information to enable people to plan in a more realistic time frame for applications coming through the MHRA. So really then looking at how we have then delivered on our performance. Onto the next slide and 2.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. So moving on to our performance, hopefully a number of you on the call here, and I'm very confident that a number of you on the call here will have noticed that our performance has improved significantly over the last 3 months. We have taken decisions on 494 applications that were pending at the very start of the year, and that's reduced our work queue by 35%. We set ourselves a very challenging target to reduce the number of pending applications by the end of March to 750 or less than 750, and we achieved that with a lot of hard work and a lot of determination. We achieved that. We as you can see there from the cartoon there, we are planting stakes in the ground. We do have other targets that we are aiming for in the near future. Another area is obviously in order to get your licenses, we are assessing responses to RFIs. So we cleared around 180 outstanding RFI responses. And that actually is where we would like to ask for some help now, because around 3% of the overdue applications are awaiting a pending response assessment. So they're at that stage. And so in order for us to continue with the current output rate and to progress overdue applications, we would really appreciate it if companies, although you have 60 days to respond to an RFI, if you could do that at the earliest opportunity to allow us to take our final decision as soon as possible. Next slide, please. So you should recognise this data here. This is what we publish on the 15th of every month, and this is the one that has recently been published this month. So just to pull out a couple of the things that you'll already be aware of, you can see there that our type 1B variation performance has been maintained. We made a public commitment to maintain those within statutory timelines, and we have maintained that improvement, and you can see there that we have granted 81% within target time. Another area to focus on is the Established Medicines and Nationals MAAs there. So you can see at the moment that we determined 55 applications last month in March, and that's a 13% in time. Now, because of the way in which we're prioritising and taking on the applications, we expect that percentage granted in time to gradually improve over the coming months, because as Julian will come to later, we can talk about how we do prioritise them, but with the order in which we're taking the applications are the oldest first. So by and large, some of the applications that we are picking up for first assessment have already gone over the 210 statutory deadline. You'll also see here signs that although IRP was only introduced at the start of the year, you'll be able to see there that currently we are performing very well with the IRP route. Another figure to perhaps look at and pull out there is the work on hand. So you can see on the 9th of January, 1,167 applications were overdue. And as of the 31st of March, 881 applications are currently overdue. Now, this takes account of applications that are falling overdue on a weekly basis. And so we are tracking that as well as a ring-fence backlog, which was everything that was overdue as of the 9th of January, which is the 750 that I alluded to in the previous slide. But we will continue to report on this number as part of our monthly metrics. So I think we can move on now to the prioritisation slide. Thank you.
Yeah, so just basically looking at the prioritisation and how we deal with those, so that we are looking, once we get a process which is in control, as Rachel was alluding to on the variations and the IRP, we're looking to make sure that that is maintained at that level, so that we are then not building up fresh backlogs going forward. With the prioritisation of the work queue on the next slide, we have a triage situation where we look at public health priorities. So this is firstly looking at shortage, short and long term. So here, just to really reflect a little bit how the agency deals with these things, we are prioritizing based on expediting requests from either companies or via DH, and they will be receipted to us but confirmed if there is a supply shortage with the Department of Health Medicine supply team. So what we understand is there may be some education that could help in this area, so that we have been working with trade associations and Department of Health, NHS England, to understand how we can improve this process and make this slightly slicker, so that we will be looking to have a webinar at some point over the next 3 months, looking at how we prioritize, what we do. But the first part of that is to then say, if there are short-term issues, which are typically mitigated with either batch-specific variations or something similar, then we really request that those are confirmed with Department of Health, Medicine Supply Team, and also then mentioned to our variation queries mailbox. If there are longer term, the same process applies, but it's then looking at how do we ensure that we have the required information to make an assessment that those longer term shortages will be mitigated by some of the applications coming through. But what I would like to just to reiterate and confirm is that our backlog of established medicines licensing does not prevent us authorizing licenses to prevent shortages. So of the licenses that Rachel mentioned that we'd cleared over the first quarter, we had, in addition, over 100 licenses which were granted that were within statutory timelines. So that where we are looking at the license decisions that we make, about those, the aggregated over the first quarter was about 25% of those licenses granted were within statutory time. So, and that's where we prioritize based on the public health requirement, based on the next criteria for first generics to ensure that we have the opportunity to enable the NHS to take advantage of those first generics, and we maintain a list of those to ensure that we are prioritizing. Lastly, we have first in and first out, so which is why we don't expect in the short term the percentage granted within date to rise dramatically quickly, because we feel it's unfair to disadvantage applications which have been sitting waiting for a long period of time. But we are looking to reach a point where we are able to say from a certain point in time that applications receipted after that date will be handled within statutory timelines. And that's something that we are looking at and seeing how we can make sure that that is a reliable commitment once it's made. So then moving on to the next slide.
So just a recap really on the process changes that we introduced in that previous webinar on the 7th of March that became effective from the 1st of March. Next slide, thank you. So just a quick recap and to go through the key changes. So the first was that incomplete applications will not be processed. We are undertaking a completeness check prior to full assessment, and any applications that we find to be incomplete will not be progressed. Secondly, we are only sending out one request for further information. There will not be rounds of requests for further information. Thirdly, following approval, applicants will be asked to submit a template pre-populated with the lay summary for the UK Public Assessment Report. And we are now almost 2 months into this process, and we will be doing a full review at the end of 3 months. The little picture on the side there is the guidance that you'll be able to find on our website, and that's how it looks. Next slide, please. So aside from the process that we just went through, there were a number of measures that were already implemented. So we sent out a letter asking people that had eligible national marketing authorisation applications submitted prior to the 1st of January 2024 to consider whether or not they are eligible for conversion if they have been through the centralised route and have approval, or if they have been through a mutual recognition or a decentralised procedure. This is still open to people as they are potentially getting end of procedure documents through these routes, and we would still accept a switch to an MRDCRP or an ECDRP. Secondly, we have done a number of communications on getting applications right first time, and we will touch on that again at the end of this webinar. We have a couple of checklists that are available to support applicants to help people get their submissions right first time. So the first of which is the bioequivalence and biowaiver checklist there, which is that first link there. And the second is a checklist for product information. And thirdly, we are committed to highlighting common frequent deficiencies or application flaws, and we have previously communicated that these are the top 3 areas in which we do see deficiencies, and we will also come to this later on. Julian will touch on this. So we see a number of points being raised on bioequivalence issues or inappropriate use of biowaivers. We raise a number of deficiency points on product specifications that are being proposed, the appropriateness of dissolution methods and limits, and impurities test limits in the specification. We also see a number of issues relating to nitrosamine risk assessments, which is a relatively new requirement, and many applications do not actually contain the required nitrosamine risk assessment. Move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'll pass back to Julian.
Okay, thank you. So if you move straight on to the next slide, but just really we have done and completed a review of the applications that were reviewed in March 2024. So looking through the major themes that came through from the 69 RFIs that were reviewed, and these were across 120 applications. So of that, we found that 43% of those had major objections within their application. So this was things that would prevent them being authorised for sale in the UK. Top themes were around the drug substance and the drug product, so that we can see that the percentages of RFIs issued in the drug substance and drug product is relatively similar. And when we look at the different themes that they are relating to, we then can say that the aspects of what we've previously communicated and what themes that we can ask people to really focus on when they're doing a review of an application that's been submitted to us, these are where we're finding the real kind of things that will prevent a submission being accepted. Module 1 continues to be an area where we are seeing updates required, and they may simply be down to QP declarations, GMP declarations being out of date, of which, yes, and we really appreciate your support to get them updated to us so that we prevent those applications having that view. But we also see that we have questions on the package leaflet and also on labels. So this is something where we will see with our product information quality unit to see how we can make sure that the guidance for those requirements are as clear as possible, and also looking to make sure that we have that trending down in terms of people have the guidance that they need to answer some of those questions. We do see a positive trend within the PIQ statistics as well, so that we are processing PIQ variations within statutory timelines. However, the RFI point of that is something that we are working to ensure that we curtail that as quickly as possible. If you go on to the next slide. So these are the major themes of the RFI review. So you can see across the manufacturing performance, the quality stability of the product, the regulatory compliance, and then lastly the bioequivalence and biowaiver. Those are the main themes of where we are seeing issues coming through. So how we're describing our manufacturing processes and its associated process control, how the product has been developed with its dissolution method, and then the control and critical steps of intermediates, how they are defining sometimes the starting material, how we're then looking to ensure that we have really consistent performance coming through our manufacturing and the quality of that information. We do see issues in quite a number of the applications for how we're looking at the description and composition of the drug product, stability data that comes around that information, the control of the drug product, again, so that it's looking to see how we are ensuring that it does do what it says it should do on the 10, so its dissolution rate, all those other things, and then relating to the stability, the definition and control of the container closure system and its storage. Regulatory compliance is simply a bucket where we say that all the documentation that we have requested as part of guidance simply hasn't been submitted to us, so that we are seeing absences of some documents, which when we get to the point of assessment is causing us to ask those questions. And then lastly, and we have the checklist on the website, questions around bioequivalence and biowaivers and their associated use. So it's really to make sure that if you feel that you've run through the checklist and it is correct, that will be a really positive step forward, because some of the applications that we are reviewing, and it is in its own right still the biggest area where we see those issues with applications. Other major objections which we are working with companies on and through the RFI process is the nitrosamines, the dissolution profile, so the specification that's been associated with it, the choice of starting materials, pack size and its suitability for the pathology, the QP declaration, and risk of dose dumping. So those are all other objection fields that we see from this initial review of those applications that we've seen. So that we are continuing to keep this review of RFIs up to date, so that we will be looking at how do we see that over April and then May to ensure that we're feeding out the main themes. And as we get more definition, we will be seeing how else we can prevent these avenues happening going forward. So to support these issues, we have done, and we have made on the next slide some additional guidances, but we would appreciate feedback. So if there are more required, if there are more things in these areas where you feel we can be clearer, when we feel that we can then really be understanding what those questions are preventing us getting it right. But again, if people are reviewing their applications up front and saying, well, does it comply with these guidances, so that we don't have to raise RFI points, that is really appreciated. So
yeah, so I think we're moving on to the next slide, please. So this is really our ask of you and how you can help us. So we're just going to reiterate some of the points that we've made throughout the webinar. So as I previously requested, it would be really appreciated if you could prioritise your response to RFIs at the earliest opportunity, so that we can take that final decision and get through the pending applications that we have in our system. Again, we would like people to consider the application they have currently pending with us and submit updated documents if needs be, using the usual submission method through the portal. And some of the particular documents that we'd like people to submit would be a marked up comparison of the summary of product characteristics. So where, if it is a generic product, you are comparing your product information against that of the reference product. Again, a similar bullet there in relation to the text of the patient information leaflet against the reference product. And then any additional stability data that has been generated in the time where the application has been waiting with us to support any increase in shelf life since you made your original submission. We also would ask that people continue to provide updated GMP certificates or QP declarations if that is needed. And again, just to highlight that please use the available checklists that are available on the website, so that we can ensure right first time applications.
Really just wanted to say, and as we come to 12 o'clock, thank you very much for your attendance, and I hope you found it valuable. And thank you to all of those who've been supporting behind the scenes, and to Rachel for the presentation. So have a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julian and Rachel. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate it if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You will also receive a follow-up email in the coming weeks with a link to view a recording of today's webinar. On behalf of MHRA and our presenters, thank you for joining us today, and please enjoy the rest of your day.